So I recommended a camera to a friend and he's gone out and bought it now. So I think I'm going to try and do this video to give some sort of context to help him understand why I made him choose that camera. And I think it might be a helpful video, I hope, to give other people, and him obviously, an idea of some of the elements of photography and why we would choose one thing or not, and why I've made a good choice, I think, for him. So the camera I've chosen for him is the EM1 Mark II with a 12-40 f2 lens. And now if we put that into the kind of context of all the other things out there, why should you not have this or that? So let's go from the beginning, let's go from mobile. So this is being filmed on a mobile, wonderful little things. So mobile and useful, but actually they're not actually that, the user interfaces are not that good. I find you know, if you want to take a picture, the screen is slippery. You know, where you put your finger, it's going into different kind of areas. I've got a Samsung Note 10. Yeah, whiz bang, does everything. But actually taking pictures with it is actually quite a faff. You know, if you want to try and put the exposure down, you have to press it down for long enough, and then it goes onto the focus spot or the exposure spot, or then it will go into video instead because it hasn't really understand where your thumb is. You know, and all of a sudden you're faffing around and you really just want to take a picture. And also, the idea that you have to hold something flat up vertically in front of you like a slab, how ridiculous is that? They should have made it so that you can actually just do it on a slant. So there's so many things that mobiles do so wonderfully, but I don't think the companies are actually very good at really giving them what their added kind of value is, really, is the camera. And they're not making it easy to use, I think. And so really, there's that problem, which the Olympus that I recommended him is actually a joy to use. It's really easy. It's like a Swiss Army knife. It's a big chunk of stuff compared to a mobile, but once you get it in your hand, it does what it says on the tin, and it does it all the time. So there's an advantage on the mobile straight away. Yeah, you have the extra baggage, but it's actually just really good and just works. You press a button, it works. You know, this is just sliding around your fingers on a kind of a slippery screen, and you know, swapping and swiping, and you know, it's, yeah, not that great. And also the sensor is really tiny on a mobile, so you can't really overcome that, even though they do great work with the computational stuff. So I don't want to go too heavy on mobiles, because really they are great for what they do, but they're not always wonderful to use. They're not fun to use, I think. That's the point I'm trying to make. And the Olympus is fun to use. So let's forget that now. Now, after the mobile, you get to the 1-inch sensor kind of snappers and kind of prosumer, not professional, but very expensive 1-inch sensor cameras. So they're compact, they're tiny. Problem with them is that if you really want a really highly specified one, they have so many little buttons on them and so many little functions, you really need tweezers to work them. And there you go. So it's not really that much fun. They do a lot, but if you want to do a lot, you may as well just go and just carry it an extra 200 grams, 300 grams, and just get yourself a Micro Four Thirds or something. If you're really that worried, you know, you may as well either just go for a mobile, or just extra a little bit of weight and just go for something decent like the Micro Four Thirds system, which is what the Olympus is. So the 1-inch sensor, yeah, good, but you know, if you want a small form factor, it's just too fiddly using everything. Bigger than 1 inch is the Micro Four Thirds sensor. So that is still quite a small sensor, actually. It's much smaller than, say, a full frame, which is what really serious hobbyists would buy, and still relatively a lot smaller than the APCS sizes as well, APC or whatever they're called. So it's a small sensor. So here's the limitations of the Olympus, which is why I made him choose the 1240. So let's talk about limitations now. The limitation is that sensor, and that is you can't crop the picture afterwards. It's not really that good. It is good for, you know, some things, but really at the end of the day, you really want to use every square millimeter of that sensor in a sharp image, because it's a small sensor. And that's why you really need a really good quality zoom on a Micro Four Thirds, so you're actually framing it properly and you're not having to cut the picture down afterwards. And the 1240 is absolutely an amazing lens for that. It keeps everything so sharp and straight when you zoom in and out. You know, there's no wobbling and barreling of the image at all. It's sharp from the edge to the middle to, you know, everywhere. So it's really good glass. And the f2.8 means that as you go zoom in and out, it's not a great zoom. It's wide at 12. and it comes down to almost like a portrait size at 40. So 12, 40. The thing is, it's an f2.8 lens, and f2.8 means that as you go in and out, it doesn't actually reduce the amount of light coming in. It's stable, the light going in. So if you think of a long tube, allows less light in, and a short tube allows more light in. Most zooms work that way. So most times you buy a camera, you'll buy a kit lens that has that kind of flaw. As you zoom out, the light is reduced. As you zoom in, the light is increased, which is actually not really that good, because as soon as you want to zoom in, you can't take pictures in the evening. You're very limited by the speed of the shutter and all these kind of technical things you can't set properly because of the lack of light. So the f2.8, 12 to 40 stays f2.8 as you go in and out, and that is really priceless in low light. So that's the reason why we can choose that lens for you, because we need to really make sure we get the right image fully on that sensor, and we have a good quality glass on front of there to make the image as sharp as possible. And that's exactly what the 1240 is, f2.8. Another good thing about the sensor is, yeah, it's small, but the amount of things that are in focus on the sensor, because of the size and the physics of light gathering and all that, light falling on the sensor, a lot more is in focus than, say, a bigger sensor. So it's actually easier to use as well. So if you're taking pictures of people's portraits or in a room, you know, in a big full frame sensor, a bigger sensor with the big expensive glasses and everything, you tend to have a very thin area which is in focus. Mobiles use computational photography to actually fake that, but the full frames can do it very easily. They literally have a very thin amount of area that's in focus, but it's very hard to judge where it is, and it's very easy to just wobble in and out of it. Whereas on the smaller sensor of the Micro Four Thirds, you don't get that, because actually it's quite generous. It's still nice, you still get the blurry effects and stuff, not as much as a full frame, but you get the benefit of a lot more being in focus, so it's a lot more forgiving. So I've got a portrait lens on my Canon, and it's really hard to make sure, you know, to make sure the eyebrows are, you know, it's the eye that's in focus and not the eyebrows, because there's a big difference between the two. You know, the nose is blurry, but this part of the base of the nose is in. You have to think about these things. They're really quite annoying, actually. But with the Olympus, because of the size of the sensor, you actually have a generous amount that's in focus, and it becomes much easier to use. So you get that Swiss Army feel about the Olympus. It's very easy to use. Very easy to get things into focus. And another really great thing about the Olympus is the image stabilization. So the sensor works, you know, if you move forward, it goes backwards, it wobbles, contrary to your actions, so it stays stable, and that is just totally amazing. You can take pictures in, you know, really low light. So what, the sensor is small, you know, the pixel density is really far less than a full frame, because you're putting 20 million pixels into a smaller area, unlike mobiles, which are really tiny, so they really do need that kind of computational power. But a full frame has big pixel size, and it really is quite good for light gathering. But the Micro Four Thirds has a smaller sensor, so the pixel densities, you know, the density is almost the same, but the pixels are smaller. But the sorry, where was I going? Yeah. But the image stabilization, that's it. So image stabilization is counteracts that, because it keeps the image stable and allows you to gather more light in for, you know, so for half a second longer than that is you're able to do with the full frames. So that's really one good advantage. Another Swiss Army like effect of the Olympus is really far easier to use in that respect. Right, another thing about the Olympus, the lens is great because it's also got a collar on it as well that you just move backwards and forwards and it goes into manual, and that is really useful. Say like you're in a low light situation and your autofocus is struggling a little bit, so you just quickly move your hand, it's so intuitive, and then you can twist it to manual focus, and something will come up on the electronic viewfinder, so that kind of light edging where everything is in contrast, so you can tell exactly where the focus is. You can almost move your hand backwards, head and camera backwards and forwards, and focus, and you can, so many multiple ways of actually focusing the thing, and you've got that guide telling you what's in focus, and then go click it back in and it goes back to auto again. That is really quite useful. And so I think that's the suite of features that make the EM1 Mark II really good, and it's fully featured as well, so it does far more than all these kind of things. So you can extend yourself even far further in lots of other computational ways like mobiles do, but in better ways. You can do high pixel kind of pictures. If you can put it on a tripod, it does a 50 million pixel high definition picture. And the lens range is amazing, you know, really wonderful, and some of them you can get quite compact, so you could you know, really go down and pay yourself down into a real small traveling kit. And the 1240 isn't that big itself either, but you can get far smaller lenses as well for the Olympus. So that's another reason why I think it's a great choice. It's really it helps you. It's like a Swiss Army knife, and if you want to take it to a pro level, it really will take you there. It will take you as far as you want to and help you at the beginning end. And so hopefully this is just going to be the first video, and I'm just going to help my friend through the other kind of features, and because I have exactly the same camera as well, and it'll be quite fun to teach him how to use it and hopefully turn him into a small David Bailey. Hopefully not better than me, but something better though, definitely. Okay, hope you find this useful.